You can feel grief about a decision and still make that decision. And this is the part that trips most people up. Letting go does not require that you stop caring. The goal, again, isn't detachment. Well, hey, friend, we are talking about something today that is near and dear to my heart. And I guess it's near and dear to my heart because it is such a common pain point for pretty much every woman that I know. And that is some type of clutter. It's some extra stuff that's in your house and has been there for much longer than you would like it to be. So I want you to think of one thing in your house right now, not your whole junk drawer, not the closet that you slam the door shut when guests come over and hope no one opens it, right? I want you to just think of one thing. Maybe it's a bowl in your cabinet that was your grandmother's. Maybe it's a bin of baby clothes in the basement that you've moved 4 times and unpacked 0 times. Maybe it's a shirt in your closet from a time in your life where you were younger, leaner, and it just doesn't fit anymore. The one that you wore before the kids arrived, or before your job change, or before the 15 pounds that came on and just never left. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You can think of an item like this, and you probably pictured it before I even finished painting the picture of it for you. And so with that item in mind, here's my question. Why is it still there? If you're like most of the women that I talk to, the honest answer isn't I forgot about it or I haven't gotten around to it. The most honest answer is something closer to I know what I'm supposed to do with it, I just haven't done it yet. You already know the rule, the one that we've all heard, right? If you haven't used it in a year, it goes. If it doesn't fit, it goes. If you have 3 of them, 2 have to go. If it doesn't spark anything, it goes. You know the rules and you're not following them. And somewhere back in your mind, that feels like evidence. Evidence that you're bad at this, undisciplined, or that you're sentimental to a fault. And you're behind, again, on something that should be simple. You know what? None of those things are true. And today I want to show you exactly why. So let's get into it. Well, if you've ever stood in your house and looked at something that you've moved from place to place, or maybe you've reorganized it a million times, you've packed it away, or you're looking at something that you've promised yourself you'd deal with that later, I have a question for you. What if you don't actually have an organization problem? Because sometimes the things we can't seem to make decisions about aren't really about the stuff. They're holding an old version of us, a person we love, or money that we feel guilty about having spent. Or maybe they represent a season that we're not quite ready to admit is over. And sometimes our house has simply become full of decisions that we've been too overwhelmed or busy to make. That's why I created Honest Conversations About Clutter. This isn't another decluttering challenge or organizing system. It's a completely different conversation about why we keep what we keep and what our stuff may be actually trying to tell us. We'll talk about identity and love and guilt and grief and all those postponed decisions. And I'll help you figure out what deserves space in the life and home that you're living in now. If you're ready to stop asking, why can't I just get rid of this and finally understand what's underneath it, Honest Conversations About Clutter is for you. All right. Well, welcome back to the conversation. I am so glad that you are here. My name is Jennifer, and I help women manage their lives in a way that helps them quiet the noise, shift their mindset, and really be able to move forward with intention. And we talk about all kinds of stuff with no fluff here, I will add. Well, last week, we had a really honest conversation about clutter, and one that I had been wanting to have for a very long time. We talked about the fact that clutter is information, that every pile or every bin or every drawer that you can't close is telling you something about what's underneath it. For a lot of us, for most of us, some of our stuff is going to have grief that you haven't processed yet attached to it. Could also be a decision you haven't made or a season of life that you haven't let yourself grieve or release. In that conversation that we had last week, we said, understand what's underneath it and then make a decision about it. And if you listened to that conversation, I hope it landed the way that it meant to. I hope it gave you a little bit of compassion for yourself instead of another reason to feel behind. And if you didn't listen, it's episode 269 on the Intentional Midlife Mom podcast. And if you're listening on YouTube, it's just one video back. Go and listen to that one and then come back here for this conversation today. But here's the thing. I've been sitting with something since I recorded that conversation because I know some of you listened to it and thought, okay, so I'm supposed to understand it. And then what? What happens after you understand why you're keeping the thing? What happens after you've had the honest conversation with yourself? Because here's what I think is actually going on for a lot of you. It's not that you don't understand your clutter anymore. A lot of you now especially understand it quite well. You know exactly why you're holding on to the maternity clothes. You know exactly why the box of your dad's old tools is still in the garage 2 years after he passed away. You've done the emotional work, you've had the moment of clarity, and you still haven't decided what to do with the stuff. Well, why? I'm pretty sure it's because somewhere along the way, we all absorbed the same unspoken rule about decluttering. And that rule is quietly making this so much harder than it needs to be. And the rule is this: the goal is to get rid of it. And today, I actually want to challenge that because I don't think that's actually the goal. And I think the pressure to make that the goal is exactly what's keeping you stuck. So I want to tell you about a box that lived in my closet for almost 3 years. And it wasn't my maternity clothes, surprisingly. My kids are definitely older, and that is a box of things that I have moved on from. But it was a box of things from my blog, the one that I started years ago, back when my husband had lost his job and I needed to figure out how to help carry our family financially. There were printouts of early posts. There were notebooks with my first content calendars written in pen with half the ideas crossed out and little notes made in the margin. And there was even a plaque that someone sent to me for the first post of mine that actually helped a stranger. And it had her comment printed on it. It was super sweet. There was also business cards from a version of my business that just doesn't exist anymore. By the way, my blog is still around and it's got some really great stuff. You should totally check it out. There's a ton of practical stuff there, but also some of the stuff that we talk about here. So you can head to theintentionalmom.com and find that. But back to the box. For 3 years, that box sat in the corner of my closet. And every single time I reorganized that space, and if you know me, you know that I reorganize that space more than the average person probably does. Well, I would pick up the box and I would look at it for a second and I would just put it right back in the corner. And I told myself that I was going to scan everything into digital files someday. I told myself I'd go through it properly when I had more time. I told myself a dozen small, reasonable sounding lies that all amounted to the same thing. I don't know what to do with this stuff, so I'm going to keep almost deciding instead of actually deciding. And here's what was actually happening. Every time I touched that box, I felt this quiet tug of war. Part of me thought, you're a coach now. You teach systems. You don't have to have this random box of papers in your closet. When was the last time you looked in it, right? That part of me had decided that the right answer was to get rid of all that stuff, right? Streamline all those things, digitize it, that I needed to be tidy and organized, and that's who I needed to be. But then there was this other part of me, the part that actually built that blog with blood, sweat, and tears during one of the scariest and most difficult seasons and financial seasons of my entire life. And I didn't want to let it go. And it wasn't because I needed the stuff in it. I didn't need the papers and the outlines and the blog post ramblings. But I needed to remember who I was when I built something out of nothing. And that's why I needed the box. And so I did what a lot of you do, because that's what I was feeling. And so I froze in the middle of that tug of war. I didn't keep the box on purpose, and I didn't release it on purpose either. I just didn't decide for 3 whole years. And here's the thing that I want you to catch. I didn't have a decluttering problem. I knew exactly how to declutter a box. I teach women how to do it every week, multiple times a week. But what it was a permission problem. I didn't think keep it just because it matters to me was an allowable answer. I thought the only acceptable outcomes were because I wasn't using any of the stuff and it wasn't serving an actual tangible purpose that I had to get rid of it. Or that I thought my other option was to have a really good, productive, again, I can, name very viable reasons to keep it. And it just, neither of those answers fit. And so I finally opened that box on a random day, not because I'd finally found the time, but because I finally gave myself permission to make a decision that didn't look like what I thought decluttering was supposed to look like. I kept 12 pieces of paper, the notebook, and the plaque. 2 of the earliest printed posts, and I recycled the rest. So I kept a small-ish portion of what was in the box. And I want to be really transparent here. I am not fully on the other side of this experience, right? I still have a closet with things in it that I haven't basically come to terms with or made peace with. I am not the decluttered, done, finished version of this yet. I am a few steps ahead of you. I'm not standing at the finish line, waving you forward from nowhere. I'm a few steps ahead of you. But it is true that I got there because that box taught me something. And it taught me something that I use with the majority of women that I work with on clutter, which is pretty much everyone I work with at some point. And I want to hand you the exact same thing that I give to these women, okay? So there's a big mindset shift that I want to make with you today. The actual goal of decluttering is not to get rid of things, although that sounds super counterintuitive. I get it. And it sounds like that would be the goal, right? Again, the goal is not, let me repeat, the goal is not to get rid of things, even though you probably think it is. But the goal is to make intentional decisions about what deserves your space. The actual legitimate goal needs to be to make intentional decisions about what deserves your space. And I read that twice because it's doing something different than you've probably been told your whole life you need to do with your stuff. Get rid of it has an ending built into the phrase, right? It assumes that the win condition, in order to win, that means empty box or an empty closet or an empty drawer. But make an intentional decision. It doesn't assume anything about the outcome or end point. It doesn't clarify anything about the box or the drawer or the closet or the bin. It just assumes that you actually decide on purpose instead of leaving something in this limbo land for 3 years like I did with that box in my closet. And I think this is the reason that so many of you avoid your clutter entirely. Again, it's not because you're lazy. It's not because you don't care about getting rid of the stuff or doing something with it, because you already know what you think the correct decision is supposed to be, and you're not ready to make it. And so instead of making a different, honest decision, you just make no decision at all. You pick up grandma's bowl and you think, I know I'm supposed to get rid of it. You look at the jeans from before your body changed and you think, I know if I haven't worn it in a year, it's supposed to go. You see the bin of your kids' old artwork and you think, I don't need to keep all of this. And so you put these things back every time, not because you can't make decisions, because you've already decided the right answer is supposed to be getting rid of it. And you're just not there yet. So you avoid the whole conversation entirely. Who said, here's my question. I love asking this question. Who said that getting rid of the stuff is the assignment? And I want you to actually consider that question, because I think most of us never have. We inherited this whole idea of decluttering equals getting rid of stuff, the same way we inherited 100 other rules that nobody ever asked us if we actually agreed with. So today we're going to build a different framework, one that allows for a different outcome. So we're going to talk about how the pressure of getting rid of it is actually causing the avoidance. It's causing you to avoid it. And I want to start here because I think this is the piece that you've probably never been told or noticed on your own. Again, you already know those types of rules that we hear, right? If you haven't used it in a year or 6 months, if it doesn't fit, it goes. If you have two of one thing, one of them must go. If it doesn't matter to you anymore, it goes. If it's not relevant to you anymore, it goes. And listen, those rules are not wrong. They're actually pretty reasonable. But somewhere along the way, they stopped being helpful guidelines and started being a test that you are worried about failing. Think about the last time you tried to declutter something with real emotional weight attached to it. Did it feel like an exploration? Did it feel like you could just go and decide? Did you actually feel like you had a decision in the matter? Or did it feel more like a trial where you were the defendant and the rule of you need to get rid of this stuff because it's not serving a good purpose was the prosecutor? I haven't worn this in over a year. What's wrong with me that I still have it? Your conversation could have sounded somewhat like that. Or this one, I know I'm supposed to let this go. Why can't I just do it? It's easy. Those kinds of statements and conversations with yourself is not actually decision making. That's self-judgment wearing a decluttering costume. And nobody, not you, not me, not anyone, makes their best decisions when they're standing there on trial and they're in this place of self-judgment. We make our best decisions from a place of clarity and safety. When the process feels like a confrontation with your own inadequacies or shortcomings, of course you avoid it. Avoiding a fight you think you're going to lose isn't a character flaw. It's part of how you are wired. It's how we self-protect ourselves in the animal kingdom, because yes, we're part of that. And so here's what I want you to notice this week. The next time you feel that flinch about your stuff, that little internal wince when you look at something that you know you're supposed to deal with, I want you to take a pause and I want you to do what I love to ask women to do. Get curious. And you're probably going to be getting curious instead of being critical with yourself. And ask yourself, am I avoiding this because I'm incapable of deciding or because I've already decided what the answer has to look like and I don't like it? I'm not ready to make that particular decision. Do you see how those are two completely different problems? And only one of them is actually true for the vast, vast, vast majority of women out there. I hear this constantly in my coaching conversations. A woman will tell me that she's so bad at decluttering, but in the very next sentence, she'll tell me exactly what she should do with the item in question, down to the last detail. Donate it to this specific place, or keep it for this specific reason, or take a picture of it before letting it go. She is not confused. She is not lacking information. She is not lacking a plan. She knows exactly what the, quote, correct move is. But what she doesn't have is permission to feel however she feels about making that decision. And so she avoids that object entirely and then adds a second layer of shame on top of everything because she's avoiding it. This is not a decluttering problem. This is a self-trust problem, again, kind of cloaked up in decluttering. Keeping something, what would it look like if we could agree? What would it look like for you if we could agree that keeping something actually is a legitimate decision? And this is going to surprise a lot of you and maybe even relieve some of you too. Keep it is allowed to be the answer. Not keep because I haven't dealt with it yet, and not keep because I feel too guilty to decide. I mean an actual, the case is closed, intentional keep. Picture this. You pick up something that you've been moving around your house for 10 years, maybe more. And instead of the usual spiral that goes something like, I should probably get rid of this, or I don't know why I still have this, or this is the kind of thing that's wrong with me. What if in that spiral you said something totally different? What if you could say something like, I've thought about this and I know why it matters to me, and I have room for it. I want it in my life for right now. And so I'm keeping it. Decision closed. There's no guilt. There's no reopening the case in 6 months unless you know that you're going to intentionally revisit it later. There's no sliding it into another maybe pile that quietly just becomes the permanent pile. You looked at it and you made a decision. And the decision was yes. Now, when you do this, I want you to notice how different that feels to you than the version of the decision where you just didn't deal with it. Because I haven't decided and I decided to keep it, produce the exact same physical outcome. The stuff is still there, right? The object is there in your house and it's staying. But they produce completely different emotional outcomes. One is an open loop, quietly draining you every time you walk past it because a decision hasn't been made. And the other is closed. It's a closed loop. It's settled. It's stopped costing you anything the moment that you made that call. And this is exactly what happened with my box and the notebook and the plaque and the handful of papers that I kept. They weren't sitting in my closet as unfinished business anymore. They were and still are sitting there because I decided on purpose that they could be in my life right now. And so now those things are no longer clutter. It's a decision that I still to this day stand behind. Keeping something intentionally is a completely different thing than keeping something because you won't decide. It's the same object. It takes up the same square footage, but it's a totally different experience of living with it. Now, I want to be fair to the other side of this because I'm not telling you to keep everything and call it just part of your personality. Letting go is also a legitimate, intentional decision, and it can coexist with everything that you feel about the thing that you're releasing. You can understand exactly why the baby clothes matter to you and still decide to let them go. You can deeply, deeply love your mother and still donate some of her things. You can forgive yourself completely for the $300 that you spent on that piece of equipment that you used twice and still stop storing the evidence of that purchase in your garage because somehow it makes you feel better. Or does it, right? You can appreciate who you used to be, the version of you in the smaller jeans or that had the corporate job or before the marriage ended, without requiring your house to keep storing the wardrobe, storing the business cards, storing the older version of your life. You can feel grief about a decision and still make that decision. And this is the part that trips most people up. And so let me say it as plainly as I can. Letting go does not require that you stop caring. The goal, again, isn't detachment. Nobody is asking you to become a person who doesn't feel anything about her stuff. The goal is intentionality, which is deciding on purpose with your eyes and your mind wide open instead of clinging to the stuff out of guilt or the other side, purging out of pressure and then not making good decisions. You're just literally throwing stuff into piles. If you find yourself thinking that you have to choose between honoring the memory and releasing the object, I want you to know that that is a false choice. You get to do both because the memory does not live in the object. It lives in you. The object was just holding a tangible place for it while you weren't ready to trust that part of it yet. You weren't ready to trust, I can keep the memory and let it go. But I'm guessing you're to that point now, especially if you've been with us in this conversation and the previous one. Now, I think a lot of women postpone this kind of decision because it feels dishonoring or disrespectful to let something go. Like releasing the object means releasing the person or the season or the version of themselves that it represents. But love and purpose and lessons well earned, they aren't measured in square footage. Your mother doesn't need a garage full of her belongings to know that you loved her. The past version of you doesn't need her old wardrobe hanging in your closet right now, just to know that you are proud of that version of you. You are allowed to keep the meaning and release the item. So we've talked about yes, keep it. We've talked about no, release it. I have a third option, and I don't know if you've heard me talk about it before. I've talked about it quite often here in our conversations. I talk about this in workshops. I talk about this in my coaching community. I talk about this kind of everywhere, this third option. And so if this could very well sound familiar, but if not, this is going to be a real light bulb moment for you. So this third option is not now. And know that it is a real legitimate decision that has been made also. There is a version of it's basically a version of I'm not ready. And it's completely honest and it's completely fine. It goes something like, I'm consciously choosing not to decide about my mom's things until January or something like that. Because right now I don't have the emotional bandwidth. And I know that. I recognize that about myself. That's a decision. It has a name. It has a reason. And this is the important part. It has an edge to it. It ends somewhere. You're not keeping the stuff to infinity and beyond. But there's a very different version of not now that has been running quietly in the background of a lot of women's lives for years. And it sounds like not now, but it's actually just an open loop with a nicer name. It's moving your mom's things from the guest room to the garage to the storage unit for 11 years, while they quietly weigh on you every single time you go to pay the bill for the storage unit. This is not a decision that has been made. It is a decision-shaped hole where a decision should be. And here's how you tell the difference. Is it a real not now or a not real not now? A real not now has that boundary around it, right? It's got a date. It's got a season attached to it. It's got a specific trigger that you recognize is setting it off. And it is you've also got a specific trigger in mind that will tell you when you're going to come back and revisit this again and ask, do I still need this? But an open loop, that's a closed loop. An open loop doesn't have an edge to it at all. It just continues. It just says, I'm not deciding right now. And this goes on indefinitely. And it's silently, this box, this bin, maybe even this closet, or maybe an entire room is silently costing you energy and bandwidth every single time your eyes land on that stuff, even if you've stopped consciously noticing it. You can walk past the closet, not even look at it, but your subconscious knows it's there and it is draining you. And so if not now is genuinely true for the thing you're thinking about today, I want you to make sure that you take the next step and you give it a container. It's not a someday container. You need to have some other tangible, understandable, I can hang my hat on it sort of ending, right? At the end of this season, in a month, with a specific event, like after the holidays or before the school year ends or after the anniversary of my mom passing away passes. Something concrete enough that your brain can actually rest and let that loop go, rather than quietly holding the question open forever, which is like, how long am I going to keep this? Am I ever going to get rid of it? We want to put that question away. And we can when we've got boundaries and a boundary end on our not now. Not now said honestly with a boundary is in fact a decision. Not now said forever without that boundary line is just clutter with a better sounding name. So I want to make this real for you right now. So before you move on with your day and this becomes just another cool thing you listened to and agreed with, I want you to pause right now, pause what you're listening to if you can, and go get one thing. I don't mean metaphorically, I mean literally. Hit pause, go find your version of the box in my closet and come back with one simple thing, right? Maybe it's the bin of baby clothes, it's a bowl, it's a shirt, it's the thing you already thought of at the beginning of this conversation because you knew immediately that that was your thing. So go grab that, hit pause, come back, okay? All right, so I'm trusting that you've got your thing and I want you to hold it. Actually, just hold it in your hands for a second. What came to mind for you? What does this thing represent? Not what it is, but what it stands for. Is it a season of your life? Is it a person? Is it a different version of yourself? Is it a fear about who you would be without this thing? And then what thoughts and emotions are coming up right now that you understand a little bit more about what's underneath this thing? And then I want you to ask yourself one question, the same question I finally asked myself about that box. Does keeping this somehow honor what it represents? Or does keeping this stuff continue to ask something of me that I don't have the capacity to give? And from there, you have 3 legitimate options, right? You've got not 2, but 3. You've got keep it, right? I choose this. This deserves my space. I'm not keeping it because I haven't made a decision. I'm keeping it because I did make a decision and my decision was keeping it or yes. Option 2 is to release it. It mattered. Yes, it mattered. But it doesn't need to continue to walk alongside me. I can carry what it meant without carrying the object itself. Your third option is the not now, right? This is when you're saying, I'm not ready to make a decision yet, and I'm consciously choosing when I will return back to this same place to make the decision on purpose. And so you've got this boundary around not now. So which one of those 3 fits for you? Which one of those is the answer that you need for your thing? Pick it out. Say it out loud or put it on paper. Notice how different it feels to land on an actual answer instead of putting the thing back to exactly where you found it, exactly the way that you have a dozen or more times before. That's it. That's really the whole practice. That's the whole thing that we needed to do today. My goal was to help you find one object and make one honest decision about it. You don't need to do your whole house today. You need to prove to yourself that you can do this once. So if you're sitting there thinking, Jennifer, this is exactly the kind of work I need. I don't just need to understand my clutter. I need to actually practice with help, deciding what to do about it. I want you to come do this with me. Because last week we started having this honest conversation about clutter here. This week we practiced it. Just the 2 of us, essentially, with one object. And I want to actually sit in a room with you and do this alongside you at a bigger scale. And I'm opening up registration for you to do that with me for an event called Honest Conversations About Clutter. And it really is the clutter event of the season. And here's what I know about the 2 conversations that we've had here this week and last week. You've gotten some real teaching here. You've gotten some real frameworks. You've gotten some real practice even that you can use these frameworks and these step-by-step processes on your own. But there's a ceiling to what a 30-minute conversation can do for you. And I want to be honest with you about exactly what that ceiling is. The thing is that a podcast or a YouTube video can't talk back to you. It can't hear you say out loud what came up for you when you held that bowl and gently ask you a follow-up question. It can't put you in a room with another woman who tells her story about a box that she's been avoiding and watch you suddenly recognize your own life in hers. An episode like this can't send you into a breakout room to actually work through the thing that's been sitting in your house for 3 years. With me there also while you do it. And that's what this event is for. You bring the actual thing that's been weighing on you, and we work on it together. Registration is open right now. And I would be so excited to come alongside you and help you in this way. Now, before we close today, I want to make sure I leave you with 4 key takeaways that you didn't miss. Number 1, the goal of decluttering isn't to get rid of everything, really anything. The goal itself is to make a decision on purpose. Decluttering isn't a race to an empty house. It's the practice of making an intentional call about what deserves your space right now, instead of leaving things in this limbo because you're afraid of what the right answer might mean. Takeaway 2, keep can be a real, closed, I've made it, end of discussion decision. You don't have to justify keeping something with a productive reason or a future project. I've thought about it, and this belongs in my life is a complete sentence. The moment you decide on purpose, the guilt has nowhere left to live. Takeaway 3, you can honor what something meant and still let it go. Loving your mother, grieving the version of yourself you used to be, or forgiving yourself for a purchase doesn't require you to keep the object forever. The memory lives in you, not in that thing. And takeaway 4, not now only works as a real decision if it has boundaries around it. A not now with a date or a season attached to it is intentional. A not now with no ending or boundary or edge point at all is just an open loop that's going to continue to quietly drain you. That stuff is going to keep draining you. If you're not ready today, give yourself a real container to come back to it, not a someday that never arrives. Friend, you don't need to get rid of everything in your house to feel like you're finally in control of it. You just need to stop letting things sit in that in-between place, not kept on purpose, not released on purpose, just sitting there, unresolved, unsettled, quietly costing you probably a lot every time you walk past these things. Go make one decision like we talked about today, just one. Keep it or release it or give it that not now along with the boundary. That's enough for today. And then come join us for honest conversations about clutter. And you can even start off with a thorough clutter check-in that will help get you off to a great start. And the check-in is free. We've got notes down in the show notes where you can go. Otherwise, you can go to midlifeclutterhelp.com and join us for honest conversations or to grab your free check-in. Friend, I am so honored you were here with me today. We'll continue with great conversations next time.